How could more than 100 people die in accidents linked to Firestone tires when the first accident happened way back in 1992? The alarming fact is that a lot of people have known there was a problem for years. They include judges and lawyers and victims' families and companies. Why didn't the rest of us find out until this summer? Was it hush money that kept it secret? Money was paid to victims' families who sued and their lawyers. As part of the settlement, they all agreed to company demands to keep what they knew secret. And all this infuriates people like Gail Touchton, the widow of a Florida minister, one of the most recent victims to die in an accident blamed on defective Firestone tires.
If the covering up and the lying and the had not occurred, if the truth had been exposed sooner, my husband would still be here.
Mrs. Touchton's husband, the Reverend Bill Touchton, used to be the preacher at the Wingate Baptist Church in Jacksonville. This past July 2nd, he gave his last sermon here.
So I invite you, Lord Jesus, into this building, that we would see your grace, that we would hear your voice.
The next day on Interstate 95, while Reverend Touchton was a passenger in a friend's Ford Explorer, the tread on the left rear Firestone ATX tire sheared off. The rest of the tire remained inflated. The SUV fishtailed before it flipped over several times, killing Touchton instantly.
It's really not describable. I mean, it's not, there's no way to put it in the words that would help you understand it, because it's like half of your very soul has been ripped out.
Mrs. Touchton is suing both Bridgestone Firestone and Ford, claiming the companies are responsible for her husband's death.
Lives can be saved in this process of what I'm doing, and that's my purpose, is to help to see that lives are being saved and that the truth is being exposed.
Incredibly, it was in 1992, 8 years before the Reverend Touchton died, that the first lawsuits were filed blaming accidents on the same problem, tread separations on Firestone tires. Since then, we've been told nearly 200 lawsuits have been filed. But until now, virtually everything about the suits, including tens of thousands of documents examined by lawyers, has remained a secret, shielded from public view. Kim Van Etten's son Daniel, a football player at the University of West Virginia, was killed in a tread separation accident in 1997. Tell me about how you decided to sue and why you decided to sue.
Well, the trooper they called me on the phone and told me this in the middle of the night, that Danny had died, which was hard. And he kept telling me that there was something wrong with the tire.
A year and a half after she sued, Mrs. Van Etten settled with Firestone and Ford behind closed doors. So let me ask you, you got a settlement, a monetary settlement. How much was it?
I'm not allowed to state.
But even now, you can't tell me how much
No.
it was?
No.
That was the agreement?
Right.
You agreed to secrecy.
Of the financial part of it, yes.
Anything else?
Well, they sealed some documents, but I have no idea what's in them.
In fact, many internal Firestone documents, like this one, were sealed in Mrs. Van Etten's case, and in other cases too, under what's known as, quote, protective orders, secrecy agreements. Plaintiffs' lawyers have to sign them before a company agrees to turn any documents over. Firestone declined our request for an interview about the lawsuits and these protective orders, but in a Senate hearing, a Firestone Executive Vice President, Gary Krieger, testified the company needed to keep the documents secret for what he called competitive reasons.
My understanding is that the confidentiality orders applied only to trade secret and formulations and these kinds of matters. And of course, the judge had to agree that those were trade secrets or industry trade secrets. In reviewing the cases, no, there was nothing to indicate that there was a tire defect.
But plaintiffs' lawyers say Firestone has been sealing documents for years that relate directly to safety issues. For example, this document from Mrs. Van Etten's suit shows that more than 1,400 tires made at a Firestone plant in Wilson, North Carolina, were returned by consumers in 1992, 8 years before the company recall, because of belt separations or suspected belt separations. The data in the document comes from sealed Firestone documents that were provided to Roe Brogdon, Mrs. Van Etten's lawyer. In this particular case, did you or did you not see documents and information that indicated there were serious problems with Firestone tires, especially on Explorer vehicles?
Out of the Wilson plant, certainly.
The tire that shredded in the accident that killed Mrs. Van Etten's son came from the Wilson plant, and tires that figure in at least 22 other lawsuits also came from Wilson. Based on what you know about the case, what did Firestone know and when did they know it?
They knew it in the early 90s. They knew what their problems were. They let it go. They put quantity over quality.
There's no doubt in your mind that that's a fact, that
Yes.
those things are facts.
No doubt.
Brogdon can talk about the document on the Wilson plant only because CBS News and some other news organizations petitioned a judge to unseal it. Brogdon says there are many other documents that are still sealed that he cannot talk about. Tell me what you saw.
I cannot.
What do you mean you cannot?
Well, I cannot at this time speak to specific protected documents.
What would happen to you if you did?
I would probably be held in contempt of court.
All the time Brogdon says he had this information about Firestone tires, the federal government says it was kept in the dark about the possible safety problem. Dr. Sue Bailey says her agency should have been informed a lot sooner. She is the new administrator in charge of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA. The first known death linked to the Firestone tire problem was in 1992. When did you or anyone in the federal government first find out about the possibility of a problem?
It was not really until the end of last year that we began to see the numbers increasing.
If a company knows that they're receiving an inordinate number of complaints about the safety of a product, and at the same time they're settling a large number of lawsuits, my question is, are they obligated legally to let you know that?
They are not obligated at this time to let us know that.
Did Firestone at any time indicate to the agency in any way that they were having these problems?
They did not inform us of the large number of claims or the lawsuits.
Dr. Bailey is now urging Congress to pass legislation that would pressure companies to get that information to her agency earlier. And the former head of NHTSA, Joan Claybrook, now the president of the consumer organization Public Citizen, has told Congress protective orders should be abolished.
Well, first of all, I do believe that the gag orders kept this information secret inappropriately and resulted in the death and injury of lots of people. I think these orders are unethical. I think, among other things, the American Bar Association ought to declare them as unethical.
A Bar Association task force has been looking into these questions. The committee was headed by Lorna Schofield, a corporate attorney. She says companies need protective orders to defend themselves, especially when plaintiffs' lawyers demand to see vast numbers of corporate documents.
Sometimes it's just a matter of a plaintiff's lawyer finding some sexy document that would be interesting to the media, not necessarily relevant to public safety, and it's really used as a threat sometimes. They try to get settlements. In a sense, they sometimes try to coerce or blackmail corporations into settling just to save them embarrassment.
In her case, Kim Van Etten says she had no choice but to get a protective order and agree to secrecy. The alternative was to face a long, painful, and emotionally draining court battle.
It was killing me. And they said it could be 6 years, and I said, I can't do anymore. I said, I'm going downstairs. You guys do what you want. I said, but I'm done with this. I can't go on anymore.
Did you realize at the time that, in effect, by sealing these documents, information was being kept secret that might eventually save people's lives or keep them from being injured?
To be honest with you, I didn't think about that. You know, until things started happening afterwards, you know. But it's so very hard when you're dealing with the death of your son that you almost would do anything just not to have to deal with it anymore.
Mrs. Van Etten says she had her lawyer, Roe Brogdon, deal with the legal arrangements and sign the protective order.
I made an agreement in order to prove my client's case.
But as the counselor for the plaintiff, what if you say, you know, I have a feeling that there are matters of public safety involved in some of these documents, so I'm not going to make this agreement?
Then typically you're not going to get any place. Now, you can spend maybe 2 years litigating over that point, but are you doing what's best for your client? And I'm not saying what's best for your client and what's adverse for America. I'm saying your job as a lawyer is to prosecute and win that case. And that's where your mind better be and your focus better be.
You get the evidence, prove the case, but the public can't know about it.
Well, the problem is, if you spend all your time doing that, you're never going to prove the case for your client. You're fighting two battles. You cannot afford, if you're going to win, to fight those two different battles.
There's a matter of intense public safety involved,
Right.
and the public doesn't get to know.
Right.
And for his efforts, Attorney Brogdon was paid quite handsomely. Lorna Schofield says protective orders move cases along a lot faster for lawyers who sue companies like Firestone and who get a percentage of every settlement. Tell me why I or any other citizen should not believe the defendant's lawyers, the plaintiff's lawyers, and the victims in these cases all benefit from the present system, that the only people who really lose as a general rule wind up be the general public. Is that a valid argument?
I don't agree at all, and I think the problem with the argument is that it asks too much of the justice system. The purpose of civil cases is for a private party to settle its dispute with another private party and to get money for its injury. That's what the system is designed to do. It's not designed to publicize all of the ills in our society or improper products that have been manufactured. That's the job of other parts of the government and other regulatory agencies. That is not the job of the courts.
Recently, Kim Van Etten has been having second thoughts about this secrecy agreement that helped her win a big settlement with Firestone. She says she's been thinking about the people who died after her son in accidents involving Firestone tires.
I literally, I'm telling you, I felt like I killed those people. And in all honesty, I do have a hand in it, and I'll have to answer to it sometime in my life or after my life.
Well, but why do you feel that way? I think people watching and listening would say, well, listen, you don't have anything to answer for.
Yes, I do.
Ford and Firestone might. Well, yes, you do? Tell me about that. What do you feel you have to answer for?
Because even though I didn't know that things were in there, a lot of people died. And if I said no and went those 6 years and got strong instead of crying, and they wouldn't be dead.